What if the money in your pocket was born inside a goddess's temple? The trail from ancient Rome to modern central banks hides a truth so sacred it was hiding in plain sight all along. Let's find out.
What is the truth about the sacred lie? How banks stole the concept of faith. We interact with money every single day, yet we remain entirely blind to the hidden theology governing our wallets.
We like to think of modern finance as a system of cold, hard mathematics and rational economic theory. But look closer at the institutions that control our wealth, and you will find a system built entirely on ancient rituals, dogma, and blind devotion.
Why do we instinctively trust that a plastic card, a piece of printed paper, or a digital number on a screen holds actual tangible value? What compels us to trade our precious time for symbols? The answer is hidden in plain sight. Every time you swipe a credit card, you are literally speaking Latin. The word credit derives directly from the Latin credo, which translates to I believe. Furthermore, fiduciary stems from fiducia, meaning faith.
If credit is fundamentally an act of religious belief, where did this financial theology actually begin? Who were the original architects of this system of holy debt?
The world's very first bankers weren't Wall Street executives, they were ancient Mesopotamian priests. Around 3000 BCE, the earliest recorded banks were massive ziggurats, like the Anna Temple in Uruk. Here, attractive, commanding priests in stylized, regal garments managed agricultural surpluses.
Why were religious leaders the only ones trusted to handle the ancient world's growing economic wealth? Why not merchants or kings?
Temples were the ultimate fortresses. Their sacred status, combined with heavily armed guards, deterred theft. More importantly, in the ancient world, robbing a bank wasn't just a property crime. It was considered a direct, unforgivable sin against the gods themselves.
How did this sacred storage system evolve into the aggressive lending and interest practices we recognize today? What made the priests realize they could multiply their power?
The priests noticed that nature grows and decided debt should too. The ancient Sumerian word for interest, mash, literally translates to calf. They fundamentally believed that debt should naturally multiply over time, just like a herd of livestock breeding in a field.
Did this fusion of religion and economics survive the transition into the mighty Roman Empire? Or did the Romans finally separate the church from the coin?
It didn't just survive, it was immortalized. The Temple of Juno Moneta housed Rome's first silver mint. The beautiful, powerful goddess's title, Moneta, is the direct etymological origin of the English words mint and money. Even Rome's public treasury rested inside the Temple of Saturn.
With the fall of Rome, Europe plunged into the chaotic centuries of the Dark Ages. Who stepped up to keep the sacred flame of banking alive in a lawless world?
The mantle was taken up by an incredibly unlikely group, a Catholic military order sworn to absolute poverty. The Knights Templar, legendary crusaders adorned in striking white mantles with red crosses, quietly transformed into the most powerful and trusted financial institution of the medieval world.
How did a religious order explicitly sworn to poverty manage to invent the complex international banking networks we use today? In 1150 AD, the Templars pioneered branch banking. They issued encrypted letters of credit to pilgrims traveling to Jerusalem. To prevent fraud, they secured the world's first international bank accounts using a highly secretive proprietary substitution cipher based on the geometry of the Maltese cross.
What happened when the absolute power of the secular state inevitably clashed with these holy, untouchable bankers? Who wins when the crown fights the cross over gold?
King Philip IV of France was drowning in debt to the Templars. His solution was brutal. He raided the Paris Temple on Friday, October 13th, 1307, torturing and murdering his bankers to erase his national debt, an act of betrayal that birthed the superstition of Friday the 13th.
With the holy orders destroyed and banking firmly in the hands of secular, profit-driven men, how did modern financial institutions maintain the deep public trust required to hold everyone's wealth?
They literally stole the architecture of the divine. Early 20th century banks were deliberately designed as neoclassical temples of finance. They featured massive stone columns, vaulted ceilings, intricate bronze grills, and echoing marble floors that mimicked the grandeur of antiquity.
Why do these grand architectural designs matter so much to the psychology of modern banking? What happens in our minds when we enter these spaces?
The architecture subconsciously tricks your brain into feeling a profound sense of divine security and permanence. When you walk into a building that mirrors the Pantheon, you instinctively lower your voice, stand a little taller, and unconditionally trust the institution.
What fragile, dangerous secret were these massive marble banking temples desperately trying to hide from the very public they sought to reassure?
They were masking the illusion of fractional reserve banking. The shocking truth is that the bank doesn't actually have your money. They lend out vastly more than they hold in reserve, relying entirely on the collective faith that everyone won't withdraw their funds at once.
If the money isn't physically sitting in the vault, what actually gave the currency its perceived value? How did people trust paper before the modern era?
For centuries, it was the gold standard. Paper money was simply a receipt, a binding promise that you could walk into a bank and exchange that paper for a physical, immutable, and universally valued piece of precious metal.
What happened when governments finally severed our money from the physical reality of gold? How did the system survive without its anchor?
We entered the era of fiat currency. Without gold, money became completely untethered from the physical world. Its value is now dictated entirely by government decree, backed by absolutely nothing but the collective imagination and trust of the populace.
So what is the ultimate truth about this system? How did the evolution from ancient temples to modern central banks fundamentally change our reality? The most surprising truth about modern money is that the term fiat literally translates to the biblical command, "Let it be done," revealing that central banks operate on divine decree rather than economic theory. Long before Wall Street existed, the world's first banks were ancient temples, where priests managed agricultural loans and equated debt with multiplying livestock. As finance evolved through the Knights Templar to the Federal Reserve, bankers deliberately co-opted the architecture, etymology, and rituals of religion to manufacture public trust. Ultimately, the abandonment of the gold standard wasn't just an economic shift. It was the final step in replacing tangible reality with blind faith, turning the state into the new object of worship.
What does this mean for us today, living in a world completely governed by this invisible, deeply religious faith in the power of fiat?
It means we are all devout believers, whether we realize it or not. Every swipe of a card is a prayer, and every loan is a sacrament. We haven't outgrown religion. We have simply traded the gods of antiquity for the central banks of today.